You know what they say about the ocean. It takes as much as it gives. But in the waters surrounding Kodiak Island in Alaska, the ocean takes even more than usual. It takes lives, it takes ships, it takes cargo, it takes mental health, and it even takes your hopes. During my 18 years with the Alaska State Police, damn it, I recovered so many bodies that even remembering them is painful. In October 2021, I encountered something that made me realize the ocean doesn't just take things. Sometimes it changes them, misdirects them. My name is Sergeant Tom Bradley, and if you're watching this from Alaska, especially Kodiak or the surrounding islands, you may have heard whispers about what happened that October. The official story talks about a fishing boat accident, hypothermia, and mass hallucinations caused by toxic algae. It's all lies. Maybe it stems from the idea that sweet lies are better than harsh truths, but it's still all lies. Those in the Kodiak area, please leave your comments about this story, and if it piques your interest even a little, your likes are important to me. You may have noticed that fishing boats no longer go to certain coordinates, like the old ones that never mentioned the lower part of Oceanic Bay. There's a reason for that. What actually happened in the Kodiak incident is connected to this. That's why 17 experienced fishermen are sadly dead or missing, or refuse to even go near the bay, let alone get back on a boat. Because of this, I can never look at the ocean the same way again. When October arrives, the weather in Kodiak becomes truly brutal. Storms from the Bering Sea come with winds and waves that could capsize boats and swallow them whole. The fishing is still good, plenty of black cod, silver salmon, and pollock. But every trip is an unpredictable risk. There's an old saying, the ocean gets hungry in October. After what I saw, I understood what they meant much better. I was stationed in Kodiak City, the main center of Kodiak Island, about 250 miles southwest of Anchorage. It had a population of about 6,000. The population consisted mostly of fishing families, Coast Guard personnel, and tough, crazy people who were accustomed to this climate, with 9 months of rainy weather and 3 months of less rainy weather. My job mainly involved classic bar fights among fishermen, family disputes exacerbated by isolation, and search and rescue operations to save people who underestimated the Pacific Ocean, sought adventure, and got what they wanted. On October 12, 2021, at 5:47 a.m., I was suddenly awakened by a call from the Coast Guard station, and Lieutenant Clark Park's voice, whom I knew from several rescue operations, sounded unusually tense and frightened. "Tom, we've got a situation. The fishing vessel Arctic Dream sent out a mayday about 3 hours ago, then went silent. But Tom, the message they sent doesn't make sense." "Weather-related?" I asked, already pulling on my gear. October storms had claimed plenty of vessels over the years. No, the weather was calm last night. Unusually calm, actually, the mayday. Hold on, I'll play it for you. The recording was scratchy, distorted by static, but I could make out the voice of Captain James Jimmy Kuskov, a Russian-American fisherman I'd known for 10 years. Jimmy was as experienced as they came, 40 years on these waters, not the type to panic. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Arctic Dream. Position approximately 57.5 north, 152.8 west. We've found them. Oh God, we've found all of them. They're in the water, but Mayday, do not approach these coordinates. Something's wrong with the water. Something's wrong with the... Jesus Christ, they're coming aboard. The transmission cut to static." "How many souls on board?" I asked Clark. 6. Jimmy, his 2 sons, Peter and Michael, and 3 crew members, David Huang, Marcus Totem, and Billy Nashuk. All experienced fishermen. All men who knew these waters better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. Whatever had happened out there, it wasn't amateur hour gone wrong. We're sending a cutter now, Clark continued. But Tom, there's something else. 3 other boats in that area have gone silent in the last 2 hours. The Persistent Dream, the Salmon King, and the Northern Hall. That's another 11 fishermen unaccounted for. 4 boats, 17 men, all experienced, all in the same area. This wasn't a coincidence. I joined the Coast Guard Cutter Mustang as a liaison, bringing my years of local knowledge. The ride out to the coordinates was rough despite the relatively calm seas. October in the Gulf of Alaska never really cooperates. As we approached the area where the Arctic Dream had sent its mayday, I noticed something odd. The water was too calm here, almost glassy, and it had a different color, darker, with an oily sheen that reflected the gray morning light in unsettling ways. "You see that?" I asked Petty Officer Rick Martinez, who was manning the radar. "Yeah, and I'm seeing something else," he replied, pointing at his screen. "We've got debris about 500 meters northwest, but the radar's acting weird, keeps showing objects that appear and disappear." As we approached the debris field, the first thing we spotted was part of the Arctic Dream's hull, the name still visible on a piece of fiberglass. But the damage to it wasn't consistent with a collision or storm. It looked melted, like something had dissolved the material at a molecular level. "Jesus," Captain Amanda Foster breathed. "What could do that?" We found more debris scattered across maybe a square mile, pieces of all 4 boats, nets, buoys, personal items. But no bodies, no life rafts, no emergency beacons, just empty ocean and dissolved fiberglass. Then Martinez called out, "Contact in the water." "Looks like a survivor, bearing 030, about 200 meters. We rushed to that position and found Billy Nashhook, one of Jimmy's crew, floating in his survival suit. He was alive but hypothermic, his eyes wide with shock. As we pulled him aboard, he started screaming, "Don't let them get me! They're still down there. They're all still down there." We got Billy inside, wrapped him in thermal blankets, and I tried to get information while the medic worked on him. His core temperature was dangerously low, but it was his mental state that worried me more. This was a man who'd survived storms that would terrify most people, and he was shaking with fear, not cold. "Billy, what happened? Where are the others?" His eyes focused on me, and for a moment he seemed lucid. "Tom? Tom Bradley?" "Yeah, Billy, it's me." "You're safe now. Tell me what happened." We were fishing, normal night, calm seas. Then Jimmy spotted something on the sonar, a big school of something, but the readings were wrong. Too big, too deep, but also too shallow, like they were at multiple depths at once. "What do you mean?" "The sonar showed them at 50 fathoms and at 10 fathoms simultaneously. Same school, same position, but at different depths. Jimmy thought the equipment was malfunctioning, so we threw out a deep net to investigate." Billy started shaking harder. The medic tried to sedate him, but he grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "When we pulled up the net, Tom, it was full of bodies, human bodies. But they were wrong. Some were fresh, like they'd just drowned. Others were decades old, skeletal, covered in algae. And others were still moving. Moving? Billy, that's not possible if they were—" "I know what I saw," he screamed. "They were dead, but moving. Their eyes were gone, replaced with something else. Like black pearls, but alive. And they were all wearing fishing gear from different eras. I recognized some of them, Tom. Bobby Taxrack, who went missing in '98. The Hanson brothers, who vanished in 2003. Even Old Man Ito from the 1970s. All of them in our net. All of them wrong." The medic finally got the sedative into him, and Billy's eyes started to close, but he kept mumbling. Jimmy tried to cut the net loose, but they climbed aboard. Dozens of them. They didn't attack, just stood there, dripping, staring with those black pearl eyes. Then they spoke all at once in perfect unison. They said the ocean wants its due, that we've taken too much, that it's time to give back. Billy passed out then, his vitals stable but his mind clearly traumatized. I looked at Captain Foster, who was pale despite her years of experience. Mass hallucination, she suggested without conviction. From what? And where are the other 16 men? We searched for another 6 hours, finding 2 more survivors, Marcus Totem from the Arctic Dream and a young fisherman named Kyle Okonkwo from the Salmon King. Both told variations of the same impossible story. Bodies in the nets, dead fishermen from decades past, black pearl eyes, the message about the ocean wanting its due. Marcus was more coherent than Billy. He'd managed to jump overboard when the things came aboard and had floated for hours in his survival suit. But what he told me made me wish he'd been less coherent. They took them, Tom. Those things, those dead fishermen. They took Jimmy and the others. Pulled them overboard, but gentle-like, almost respectful. Jimmy didn't even fight. It was like he recognized something in them, understood something. The last thing I saw before I jumped was Jimmy walking to the rail voluntarily, like he was accepting something inevitable. Where did they take them? Marcus pointed down. Where else? They took them home. The ocean took them home. We had 3 survivors from 17 men. The Coast Guard expanded the search, brought in more cutters, helicopters, even Navy divers. But they found nothing, no bodies, no more debris, nothing. The only evidence was the testimonies of 3 traumatized fishermen and some anomalous sonar readings that showed large masses moving at impossible depths. The official investigation began immediately. Marine biologists tested the water for toxins, algae blooms, anything that might cause hallucinations. The results were interesting, but not in the way anyone expected. The water in that area had an unusual mineral composition, with trace elements that didn't match the surrounding ocean. It was as if a different body of water had been transplanted there. I interviewed the survivors multiple times over the following days. Their stories never changed, never wavered, even under skeptical questioning from federal investigators. They'd seen dead fishermen from the past. They'd seen their colleagues taken willingly into the ocean, and they all mentioned the black pearl eyes. On October 15th, 3 days after the incident, something happened that made me believe them. I was at the harbor talking to some of the old-timers about the missing boats when a commotion started at the far dock. A fishing vessel, the Endeavor, had just come in, and the crew was clearly agitated. I rushed over to find Captain Mike Reeves, normally steady as a rock, white as a sheet and refusing to unload his catch. "Burn it," he was saying. "Burn the whole damn catch." "Mike, what's wrong?" I asked. He looked at me with haunted eyes. "We pulled up a net full of black cod. Normal catch. But Tom, when we started sorting them, we found things, jewelry, watches, wallets, all from fishermen who've gone missing over the years. Inside the fish, Tom, inside their stomachs, and they were all tagged." "Tagged?" Each piece of jewelry, each watch, had a little tag attached. Like a museum exhibit. The tags had names, dates, and messages. He showed me one. It was a wedding ring with a small metal tag attached by what looked like seaweed. The tag read, "Robert Hansen, lost, October 31st, 2003. The ocean remembers." There were dozens of items in that catch, each one from a missing fisherman, each one tagged with information that should have been impossible to know, and each one with that same phrase, "The ocean remembers." I confiscated the items as evidence, but before I could get them properly cataloged, they dissolved. Not melted, not destroyed. Dissolved, like salt in water. Within hours, all that remained was puddles of seawater that somehow defied gravity, flowing upward and out of the evidence locker, leaving nothing behind but that same oily residue we'd found at the coordinates. The rational part of my mind, the part trained in procedure and evidence, wanted to find a logical explanation. But the part of me that had lived in Alaska for 30 years, that had heard the stories and seen the things that didn't make it into reports, knew better. The ocean around Kodiak had always been strange. The Alutiiq people, the indigenous inhabitants of the island, had stories going back thousands of years about things in the water, about the ocean having memory and hunger and intent. The Russian colonizers in the 18th century had reported similar phenomena. Ships found empty, but sailing themselves. Fishermen returning after being missing for months with no memory of where they'd been. Catches that included things that shouldn't exist. I dove deeper into the historical records. What I found chilled me more than the October storms ever could. Every 20 to 30 years, there was an incident. Multiple fishing vessels lost in the same area. Survivors telling similar stories about dead fishermen returning. The ocean collecting its due. The pattern went back as far as records existed. 1847. Russian fishing fleet, 7 vessels lost. 2 survivors speak of drowned saints pulling men into the water. 1876. American fishing expedition, 4 ships vanished. 1 survivor found speaking an unknown language, claiming the ocean had shown him all who feed it. 1903. Japanese fishing convoy, 5 vessels, 23 men missing. 3 survivors report seeing their own future deaths in the water. 1931. Commercial fishing fleet, 6 boats lost. Survivors institutionalized after claiming dead fishermen invited them to join the eternal harvest. 1962. The Kodiak fleet incident, 8 vessels, 31 men missing, officially blamed on a rogue wave, but witnesses reported seeing figures in the water during calm seas. 1994. The Chiniak Bay event, 5 fishing boats, 19 missing, 3 survivors who refused to ever speak about what they saw. And now, 2021. The pattern was clear. Roughly every 30 years, the ocean around Kodiak claimed its due. The federal investigation team arrived on October 18th. FBE, NOAA scientists, even some people from agencies that only introduce themselves with acronyms. They set up a command center in the Coast Guard station, bringing in equipment that looked more suited for a space mission than a maritime investigation. The lead investigator was Special Agent Diana Cross, a woman in her 40s who had the kind of 1,000-yard stare that suggested she'd investigated things that didn't make it into normal reports. "Sergeant Bradley," she said during our first meeting, "I've read your preliminary report. I need you to tell me, off the record, do you believe what these survivors are saying?" I considered lying, giving her the rational explanation everyone wanted to hear. But something in her eyes told me she'd seen unexplainable things before. 3 men, traumatized or not, don't hallucinate the same detailed scenario. And the physical evidence, what little we have, supports something anomalous happening out there. She nodded. We've seen similar patterns in other locations. The Bermuda Triangle gets all the press, but there are dozens of areas worldwide where the ocean behaves unusually. Kodiak has been on our watch list for decades. Watch list? Places where reality gets thin, Sergeant. Where things that shouldn't happen do. We've found that these incidents often follow patterns, cycles. And if the pattern holds here, it's not over, I finished. No, it's just beginning. She was right. That night, October 18th, the first boat came back. I was at home, trying to sleep, when my phone rang at 2:47 a.m. It was the harbor master, Fred Torsky, and he sounded stone-cold sober and absolutely terrified. "Tom, you need to get down here, now. Don't ask questions, just come. And Tom, bring a weapon." The 15-minute drive to the harbor felt like hours. The fog had rolled in thick, the kind of fog that Kodiak was famous for, where you couldn't see 10 feet in front of your vehicle. But as I got closer to the harbor, the fog took on a different quality. It glowed faintly, bioluminescent like some deep-sea creature. The harbor was in chaos when I arrived. People were standing on the docks, pointing at something in the water. Some were crying. Others were praying. Fred met me at the entrance, his face pale in the strange glowing fog. "It came in 20 minutes ago," he said. "Just appeared out of the fog." "What came in?" "The Arctic Dream." My blood went cold. "That's impossible. We found pieces of it scattered across 5 square miles. Come see for yourself." He led me to the far dock where a crowd had gathered. There, tied up neat as you please, was the Arctic Dream. Intact. Perfect. Looking exactly as it had the morning it left port 6 days ago. Except for one detail, it was empty. I boarded the vessel with 2 Coast Guard personnel. Everything was in place. Equipment stowed properly, personal belongings untouched, even half-eaten sandwiches in the galley. But no crew. The ship's log was on the captain's desk, and the last entry was from October 12th, the day of the incident, written in Jimmy's distinctive handwriting. October 12th, 2021, 0800 hours. The ocean has made its offer. We understand now. Those who feed the ocean must eventually feed it themselves. The cycle continues. We go willingly to join those who came before. Tell our families we are not lost. We are home. Below that, in different handwriting, no, in multiple different handwriting styles, were signatures. Not just Jimmy and his crew, but dozens of names. Fishermen who had been lost at sea over the past century. Names I recognized from memorial plaques, from missing persons reports, from legend. "Tom," one of the Coast Guard guys called from the fish hold. "You need to see this." The hold should have been full of ice and fish. Instead, it was full of water. Impossible, as the hold was watertight and above the waterline. But there it was, filled to within a foot of the hatch with dark, still water that reflected our flashlights like oil. And in that water we could see faces, not bodies, just faces, preserved perfectly beneath the surface looking up at us. Jimmy Kuskov, his sons, the crew, and behind them dozens more faces, stretching down into depths that the shallow hold couldn't possibly contain. All of them had their eyes open, but instead of normal eyes, they had those black pearls Billy had described, and all of them were smiling. I reached toward the water, some insane impulse to prove it wasn't real, but the Coast Guard officer grabbed my arm. "Sir, look at your reflection." I looked. In the water, my reflection showed me older, grizzled, wearing fishing gear I didn't own. And my eyes were black pearls. We sealed the hold and evacuated the vessel. Within an hour, Agent Cross had the entire harbor on lockdown. Her team swarmed the Arctic Dream with equipment I didn't recognize, taking readings, samples, photographs. But when they tried to pump out the water from the hold, they found it empty, bone dry. As if the water and the faces had never been there. The second boat appeared the next night. The persistent Dream, sailing into harbor on its own, no crew, same impossible perfection despite being found in pieces. This time, I didn't go aboard. Agent Cross's team handled it, but they found similar anomalies. Logs speaking of willing sacrifice, holds full of water that shouldn't exist, faces of the missing staring up from impossible depths. By October 20th, all 4 missing vessels had returned, each one intact despite the debris we'd found, each one empty of crew but full of implications that made sleep impossible. The town was in a panic. Fishermen refused to go out. Families of the missing demanded answers we couldn't give. Agent Cross called a meeting on October 21st. Her team had been analyzing the data, and what they'd found defied conventional science. The water samples from the incident area show isotopic signatures that don't match Earth's oceans, she explained to a room full of skeptical Coast Guard officers and local officials. It's as if water from somewhere else was introduced to our ocean. Somewhere else? Captain Foster asked. Another dimension, another time, we don't know. But what we do know is that the barrier between our reality and somewhere else is thin in that area. And every 30 years or so, it gets thin enough for things to pass through. Things like what? I asked. Like the collective consciousness of every person who's ever died in these waters. The ocean doesn't just take bodies. It takes memories, experiences, souls, if you believe in that. And sometimes, it sends them back. She pulled up a map on the screen, showing the coordinates where the boats had disappeared. But overlaid on it was another pattern. Ocean currents, thermal readings, magnetic anomalies, all forming a spiral pattern with the incident site at its center. This is what we call a temporal eddy, she continued. A place where time and space spiral in on themselves. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously. The fishermen who disappeared aren't dead in the conventional sense. They've been absorbed into this eddy, joining every other person who's been claimed by these waters. So, they're alive? Someone asked hopefully. They exist, Cross corrected. But existence in a temporal eddy isn't life as we understand it. They're part of the ocean now, part of its memory, its hunger. Can we get them back? Cross was quiet for a moment. Theoretically, if someone were to enter the eddy voluntarily, understanding what it is, they might be able to communicate with those inside, maybe even guide them out. But everyone who's entered that area since the incident has reported the same thing, voices in the water, calling them to join. The 3 survivors are the only ones who've heard the call and resisted. And look at them now. She was right. Billy, Marcus, and Kyle were all in the psychiatric ward, sedated heavily because whenever they were conscious, they tried to get to the ocean. They spoke constantly about needing to go back, to complete something they'd started. I volunteered to go. I know how that sounds, but I had my reasons. Jimmy Kuskov had been a friend. His sons were good kids I'd watched grow up. If there was even a chance of understanding what happened to them, of maybe bringing them back, I had to try. Agent Cross tried to talk me out of it, but when she saw I was determined, she equipped me with things that might help. A tethered recording device that could transmit from underwater, a specialized diving suit with electromagnetic shielding that might protect against the eddy's effects, and most importantly, a timer that would automatically pull me back via the tether after exactly 30 minutes. The human mind can resist the eddy for about 30 minutes, she explained. After that, the call becomes irresistible. You'll have half an hour to find answers. We went out on October 23rd, 11 days after the initial incident. The Coast Guard cutter John McCaw took us to the exact coordinates. The water was calm, that same unnatural stillness that had been reported before. As I suited up, I noticed the crew was nervous. These were people who faced hurricane seas without flinching, but this spooked them. If I don't come back, I told Agent Cross, tell my ex-wife I finally found something scarier than her lawyer. She didn't laugh. 30 minutes, Sergeant, not a second more. I went over the side at 1400 hours, October 23, 2021. The water was wrong from the moment I entered it. Too warm for October in Alaska, too thick, like swimming through honey. Visibility should have been maybe 30 feet, but I could see impossibly far, as if the water itself was luminous. And I could hear them immediately. Voices, hundreds of them, speaking in languages I recognized and languages I didn't, all saying variations of the same thing. Welcome. Join us. Feed the ocean. I descended, following my instruments toward the center of the anomaly. At 50 feet, I saw the first one. It was a fisherman, or had been. He floated vertically in the water, arms at his sides, his clothes from what looked like the 1960s. His eyes were those black pearls, but they tracked me as I passed. He smiled and spoke, his voice clear despite being underwater. Tommy Bradley, we've been waiting for you. I knew that was impossible. We were underwater. Sound doesn't work like that. But I heard him perfectly. Who are you? I asked, and somehow my voice worked too, despite the regulator in my mouth. I was Carl Hendricks, lost in '67. Now I'm part of something greater. We all are. More figures emerged from the murky water. Dozens of them, all floating at different depths, all watching me. Some were recent, still looking human despite the black pearl eyes. Others were older, their features blurred, becoming more water than flesh. And behind them, in the far distance, I could see shapes that might have been human once, but were now just suggestions of forms, memories of bodies. Where are Jimmy and the others? I asked. Here, a voice said behind me, and I turned to find Jimmy Kuskoff floating there. He looked exactly as he had in life, except for the eyes. Hello, Tom. Jimmy. Jesus. Your family thinks you're dead. I am dead by their definition, but I'm also more alive than I've ever been. I can feel every current in every ocean. I know every fish, every wave, every drop of water. The ocean doesn't just take, Tom. It gives. It gives understanding. Understanding of what? Of the real relationship between humanity and the sea. We've taken so much: fish, minerals, transportation. The ocean has been patient, but it requires balance. Every 30 years, it collects payment. Some of us, the ones who've lived on its surface, feeding from its depths. We become part of it, maintaining the balance. That's insane. Is it? You've seen the warming waters, the dying reefs, the empty nets. The ocean is sick, Tom. We're medicine. Our consciousness, our memories, our connection to the human world, we become antibodies against humanity's damage. So you're what? Voluntary sacrifices? Jimmy floated closer, and I could see that his body wasn't quite solid. Parts of him were translucent, and I could see water flowing through him like blood through veins. Not voluntary at first, but once you understand, once you feel the connection, you realize it's not sacrifice, it's transformation. The 17 of us from this cycle, we're just the latest, but we won't be the last. How do I stop this? You don't. You can't. The pattern has existed for millions of years, long before humans. We're just the latest species to feed the ocean and be fed upon in return. But Tom, you were chosen for a reason. You're supposed to be here. I felt it then, the pull they'd all described. Not physical, but mental, emotional, spiritual. The ocean wasn't just water. It was a consciousness, vast and ancient and patient. And it was offering me something: knowledge, purpose, freedom from the small, painful human existence. Join us, Tom. You've been marked since you pulled that first body from these waters 18 years ago. Every corpse you recovered, every family you couldn't give closure to, They were all preparing you for this moment. My timer showed 15 minutes remaining, 15 minutes before the automatic retrieval, but I could feel my resistance weakening. The ocean's offer was so tempting. No more pain, no more loneliness, no more watching people die for nothing. Just existence as part of something infinite and eternal. "Tom," another voice called, and Peter Kuskov, Jimmy's eldest son, floated into view. "It doesn't hurt." It's like going to sleep in warm water and waking up as the water itself. We're not lost. We're found. More figures surrounded me. Some I recognized, fishermen who'd gone missing over the years. Others were strangers, but I somehow knew their names, their stories, absorbed through the water itself. They all smiled, all beckoned, all promised peace. 10 minutes remaining. I reached for Jimmy, and where our hands should have touched, I felt water that was somehow solid. In that moment, I saw everything, the entire network of consciousness that existed in these waters. Thousands of souls, all connected, all part of the ocean's memory. I saw the pattern stretching back through time, species after species feeding the ocean and becoming part of it. Dinosaurs, ancient mammals, creatures that had no names, all part of the same cycle. "We need someone on land," Jimmy said. "Someone who understands, who can prepare the next group. In 30 years, when the barrier thins again, someone needs to explain, to make the transition easier. You want me to be your recruiter. We want you to be our voice." The ocean can't speak to land directly, but through you, it can prepare people, help them understand that this isn't death, but transformation. 5 minutes remaining. The pull was almost irresistible now. Every cell in my body wanted to stay, to shed my diving suit and join them. But some stubborn part of me, the part that had kept me alive through 18 years of Alaskan law enforcement, resisted. "I need to think about it," I said. Jimmy smiled sadly. "You have 30 years. But Tom, you can't unsee what you've seen. You'll dream of us every night. You'll hear us in every wave, and eventually you'll understand that joining us isn't losing yourself. It's finding your true purpose." The timer hit 0, and the automatic winch activated, pulling me up. As I rose, the figures followed, reaching up but not grabbing, calling but not commanding. At 30 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet, they faded back into the murk. But just before I broke the surface, I heard Jimmy one last time. "The ocean remembers everything, Tom, including this conversation. We'll be waiting." They pulled me onto the deck of the John McCaw, and I immediately vomited seawater that shouldn't have been in my lungs. The diving suit had never been breached. The regulator had functioned perfectly, but somehow I'd swallowed what felt like gallons of ocean. Agent Cross was there immediately, checking my pupils, taking my pulse, asking rapid-fire questions I couldn't process. "Sergeant Bradley, can you hear me? Do you know where you are?" I knew where I was, but I also knew where I'd been, and the two realities were fighting for space in my head. I could still feel them, all those consciousnesses in the water, like background noise that would never quite fade. "Get him to medical," Cross ordered, but I grabbed her arm. "No, I need to tell you what I saw while it's fresh." We sat in the ship's briefing room while I recounted everything. The recording device had malfunctioned the moment I'd entered the anomaly, showing only static and impossible readings, temperatures that fluctuated between freezing and boiling, depths that changed from 50 feet to 5,000 feet within seconds, pressure readings that should have crushed any human body. Cross listened without interrupting, taking notes in a shorthand I couldn't read. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "The offer they made you," she finally said. "To be their voice on land, you're considering it." It wasn't a question. 17 people are gone, I said. Their families deserve answers. That's not what I asked. I thought about lying, but what was the point? When I was down there, connected to them, I understood something. The ocean isn't just water. It's a living system, maybe the oldest living system on the planet. And it's dying because of us. What if this is its way of defending itself? What if those 17 men aren't victims, but antibodies? Sergeant Bradley, Cross said carefully, you're exhibiting signs of what we call depth syndrome. Exposure to anomalies like this can alter brain chemistry, change perception. What felt like truth down there might just be, I can still hear them. She stopped mid-sentence. Right now, I can hear them. Jimmy's explaining to his sons how the tides work from the inside. Marcus is learning the migration patterns of whales by becoming part of the current they follow. They're not suffering, Agent Cross. They're learning. She pulled out a device I didn't recognize and held it near my head. It clicked rapidly, like a Geiger counter. Residual quantum entanglement, she said, reading the display. Your consciousness is still partially connected to the anomaly. This is unprecedented. Usually the connection fades within minutes of leaving the area. What does that mean? It means you're partially existing in two states simultaneously. Part of you is here, on this ship. Part of you is still down there with them. Over the next 3 days as we returned to Kodiak, I experienced what Cross called temporal bleeding. I would be in the present. Then suddenly, I'd be experiencing moments from the past or future. I saw the harbor as it had been in 1920, full of sailing ships and steamers. I saw it as it might be in 2050, the water level higher, the docks redesigned for vessels that hadn't been invented yet. But mostly, I saw through the eyes of those in the water. I felt what Jimmy felt as his body dissolved and reformed, becoming more ocean than man. I experienced Peter's wonder as he learned to navigate by sensing magnetic fields like a salmon. I knew Michael's terror and eventual acceptance as he realized he would never age, never die, never leave. The psychiatric evaluation was a joke. How do you explain to a therapist that you're simultaneously sitting in their office and floating in the consciousness of an insentient ocean? Dr. Lisa Park, the specialist they brought in from Anchorage, tried her best. These experiences, while vivid, are likely trauma responses. Doctor, what color tie are you planning to wear tomorrow? She frowned. I don't understand. Blue with silver stripes. Your daughter will spill orange juice on your first choice, the green one, as you're leaving for work. How could you possibly know? Because tomorrow has already happened in the water. Time doesn't work the same way down there. Everything that has happened and will happen exists simultaneously. The next day, she showed up wearing a blue tie with silver stripes, looking at me like I was something dangerous. Agent Cross decided to keep me under observation. Not arrest, not hospitalization, just observation. They put me up in a Coast Guard facility where they could monitor my condition. But the real reason became clear when she visited on October 27th. 3 more fishing vessels have reported encounters, she said. Crews seeing figures in the water, hearing voices calling them. But they're all returning to port safely. Whatever you did down there, you've changed something. I didn't do anything. The pattern says otherwise. For the first time in recorded history, the 30-year cycle has been interrupted. Boats are encountering the anomaly but aren't being taken. Why? I knew why, because Jimmy had told me through our connection. They have enough for now, 17 from this generation, but they need someone on land, someone to prepare for the next cycle. And they chose you. They gave me 30 years to decide. Cross pulled out a file, thick with documents and photos. This isn't the first time this has happened. We've found records of others like you throughout history. People who made contact with these anomalies and survived, changed. Some went insane, some disappeared, but a few became what we call interpreters. They live between worlds, helping manage the interaction between our reality and theirs. She showed me photos. A Japanese fisherman from 1903 whose eyes had turned partially black, but who lived another 40 years, warning boats away from dangerous waters. A Russian priest from 1847 who claimed to speak for the drowned, negotiating fishing rights that somehow always avoided the anomaly. An Alutiiq shaman from pre-contact times, depicted in artwork with eyes like tide pools, standing between the ocean and the land. You're saying this is my job now? Whether I want it or not. I'm saying you have a choice. We can try to sever the connection, though the process is dangerous and not always successful. Or you can accept it, learn to manage it, and maybe save lives in the process. That night, I had the dream that would recur for years to come. I was standing on the dock, but I was also in the water. I could see myself from both perspectives simultaneously. The me on the dock was aging, getting grayer, more weathered. The me in the water remained unchanged, eternal, patient. And between us, a line of communication, thin as fishing line but strong as steel cable. "Tom," Jimmy's voice came through the connection. "The families need to know we're okay. You're dead, Jimmy. That's not okay. We're transformed. Death is just a word for a change state humans don't understand. Tell my wife I love her. Tell her I'm not suffering. Tell her I'm part of something beautiful. She won't believe me. Then show her. How? Bring her to the water. Let her hear my voice. One time, safely, controlled. Let all the families hear us, just once. Then they can mourn properly, knowing we chose this eventually, knowing we're not lost." I woke up with my pillow soaked in seawater. The next day, I made a decision that would define the rest of my life. I told Agent Cross I would accept the role of interpreter, but on my terms. I wanted to arrange a gathering, a chance for the families to say goodbye properly. "That's incredibly dangerous," she said. "Exposing grieving people to the anomaly could trigger another mass incident. Or it could provide closure. Let them understand that their loved ones aren't suffering. The not knowing is killing them." It took 2 weeks of negotiation, planning, and safety protocols, but on November 11th, 2021, we gathered at a secure location on the coast. Not at the anomaly site, that would have been too dangerous, but at a place where the connection was strong enough for me to facilitate communication. 15 families came. Some skeptical, some desperate, all grieving. Agent Cross had a full tactical team on standby, ready to evacuate if things went wrong. I stood knee-deep in the frigid water, feeling the connection strengthen. "I need you all to understand," I said to the gathered families. "What you're about to experience isn't natural. Your loved ones exist in a state between life and death. They're part of the ocean now. You'll have 5 minutes each, no more. If you feel any compulsion to enter the water, you need to tell us immediately." The first was Margaret Kuskoff, Jimmy's wife. A strong woman who'd been married to the sea as much as to Jimmy for 35 years. She stood at the water's edge and I opened the connection. "Maggie?" Jimmy's voice came through me, but it was clearly his voice, his intonation, his pet name for her. She gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Jimmy, is it really you?" "It's me, love. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I need you to know I'm not in pain. I'm not scared. I'm part of something incredible now. "Come back," she sobbed. "Please come back." "I can't. My body isn't. I'm not physical anymore, Maggie, but I'm still here. Every time you walk by the ocean, I'm in those waves. Every time it rains, that's partially me. I'm not gone, just changed." They talked for 5 minutes, Jimmy explaining through me what had happened, Margaret asking the questions she needed answered. When the time was up, I gently closed the connection. Margaret collapsed on the beach, sobbing, but there was relief in her tears too. One by one, I facilitated these final conversations. Peter and Michael Kuskov speaking to their mother and sisters. David Huang joking with his brother in Mandarin, a language I didn't speak but somehow could convey. Marcus Totem singing a traditional Kodiak song with his grandmother. But it was Billy Nashuk's conversation that broke me. Billy, the survivor who was now in a psychiatric facility, had a 10-year-old daughter named Anna. She stood at the water's edge in a pink jacket, holding her mother's hand. "Daddy," she called out when I opened the connection. "Why did you leave?" But it wasn't Billy in the water who answered. It was Billy in the psychiatric ward, 200 miles away, speaking through our shared connection to the anomaly. "I didn't leave, baby." His voice came through me, clear and sane for the first time since the incident. "I'm just stuck between two places. Part of me is in the water. Part of me is in the hospital. And I can't figure out how to put myself back together. Can you come home? I'm trying, Anna. Every day I'm trying. But Daddy saw something that changed him, and I need time to understand it. Are you scared? Not anymore. Because I know you're brave enough for both of us." When I closed that connection, I felt something shift. Billy's fragmentation was healing, slowly. The connection to the anomaly, instead of driving him mad, was actually allowing him to integrate his experience. Over the following weeks, all 3 survivors showed improvement. Marcus and Kyle were released from psychiatric care, though they would never be the same. They could feel the ocean calling them, would always feel it. But they could resist now. They understood what it wanted, and could choose not to give it. Billy took longer, but by December, he was coherent enough to go home, though he would never fish again. He got a job at the harbor master's office, and every morning he would stand at the dock's edge, having conversations with those in the water that only he and I could hear. As for me, I became what Agent Cross had described, an interpreter. I worked with the Coast Guard, identifying when the anomaly was active, warning boats away from dangerous areas. I helped recover bodies when conventional methods failed, able to sense where the ocean had taken them. And every 30 days I would facilitate another communication session for the families, though fewer came each time as they found their peace, but the real work was preparing for the next cycle. Jimmy had been right. In 30 years, the anomaly would need to feed again. My job was to make sure that when it happened, people understood what was being asked of them, that they could choose, truly choose, rather than being taken by surprise. I started documenting everything, creating a guide for future interpreters, because I knew that eventually I would face the same choice Jimmy had faced. The connection grew stronger each year, the ocean's call more insistent, and part of me, the part that had touched that vast consciousness, wanted to answer it. Dr. Park, the psychiatrist, continued to monitor me. By 2022, she had stopped trying to convince me it was a delusion and started studying the phenomenon itself. "Your brain scans are remarkable," she told me one day. "You're showing activity in regions that should be dormant, connections between areas that don't usually communicate. It's like you've developed a new sense, one that perceives things beyond our normal reality. Is it killing me?" She hesitated. It's changing you. Whether that's death or evolution, I can't say. The strangest part was the fishing. Despite everything, despite losing 17 men, the fishing around Kodiak improved dramatically after the incident. Nets came up fuller, fish were healthier. The ecosystem seemed to be recovering from years of overfishing. It was as if the ocean was rewarding us for the sacrifice, or perhaps the 17 men, now part of the water, were guiding fish to the nets of their former colleagues. I would stand on the docks and watch the boats come in, loaded with catch, the fishermen's faces mixing relief with unease. They knew something had changed, even if they didn't understand what. And sometimes, when the light was right, I could see figures in the water beside the boats, helping guide them to safe harbor, away from storms, toward the best fishing grounds. "They're still working," I told Agent Cross one day. "Still fishermen, just fishing from the other side." "That's a comforting thought," she said, though her expression suggested she found it anything but comforting. Or terrifying, depending on your perspective. 3 years have passed since the Kodiak incident. It's now October 2024, and I'm recording this from my boat, the Threshold, anchored at the edge of the anomaly. The water here is different today, more active, more alive. They tell me the barrier is thinning again, not for a full cycle, but enough for what needs to happen. I should explain how I got here, sitting alone on a boat I bought with my retirement money, preparing to make a choice I've been postponing for 3 years. After the initial incident, I tried to maintain a normal life. I kept my job as a state trooper, worked with the Coast Guard on anomaly-related incidents, and helped families stay connected with their transformed loved ones. But normal is a relative term when you can hear the ocean's thoughts and see through time. The changes in me accelerated in 2023. My eyes, once brown, developed rings of black pearl around the irises. Not enough for casual observers to notice, but enough that I started wearing sunglasses constantly. My body temperature dropped 3 degrees, stabilizing at a level that should have required medical intervention, but felt perfectly comfortable to me. I could hold my breath for 15 minutes without trying, 25 if I concentrated. More disturbing were the mental changes. I would lose hours sitting by the water, communicating with the 17 men who'd been taken. Through them, I learned the ocean's history. Not the sanitized version from textbooks, but the real story of a living entity that had existed since Earth's waters first formed. An entity that had watched species rise and fall, that had absorbed their consciousnesses when they returned to the water, that remembered everything. Every extinction event, Jimmy explained during one of our conversations, the ocean preserved something. Not the bodies, but the essence, the information. We're swimming with the memories of trilobites, of ancient sharks, of creatures that have no names because they predate language. Why preserve it? I asked. Because forgetting is death, true death. The ocean doesn't just cycle water, it cycles consciousness. Every drop of rain was once part of a living thing. Every wave carries memories, and sometimes, when conditions are right, those memories can manifest. In February 2024, something happened that accelerated my timeline. A young fisherman named Trevor Park, doctor. Lisa Park's nephew, coincidentally, fell overboard during a storm. He was under for 12 minutes before they pulled him out, clinically dead. But when they revived him, he was changed. He could hear them too, the voices in the water. He sought me out, desperate for answers. "I can hear my grandfather," he told me. "He died at sea in 1998. He's down there, Officer Bradley. He's down there and he's happy?" Trevor became my unofficial apprentice. I taught him how to manage the connection, how to interpret the ocean's messages without losing himself. But teaching him made me realize something. I was more interpreter than human now. I spent more time in communication with the water than with the living. My apartment became just a place to store my body while my consciousness drifted between worlds. Agent Cross noticed the progression during one of our regular meetings in July 2024. "Tom, when was the last time you ate solid food?" I had to think about it. "Tuesday? It's Friday. Oh. You're sustaining yourself on seawater, aren't you?" I couldn't deny it. Every morning, I'd drink a glass of ocean water, and it would sustain me for days. Not just physically. It fed something deeper, kept the connection strong. "You're approaching the threshold," she said. "The point where you'll have to choose one side or the other. We've seen it in the historical records. Interpreters can maintain the balance for 5 to 7 years. Then they either sever the connection or they join them." Yes. That night, Jimmy visited me in my dreams, except it wasn't really a dream. We were in a space between sleeping and waking, between land and sea. "It's time, Tom," he said. "You've done what we needed. Trevor can take over as interpreter, but you're ready for the next step." "I'm not suicidal, Jimmy. Neither were we. Death and transformation aren't the same thing. You've been transforming for 3 years. All that's left is to complete the process. My life is here." "What life?" "You have no family, no real friends anymore because you can't relate to normal human concerns. You spend 18 hours a day in communication with us. Your body is already more water than flesh. You're holding onto the shore with your fingertips when your entire being wants to let go." He was right, and I hated that he was right. In September 2024, I made my preparations. I formally retired from the state troopers, trained Trevor in everything he needed to know, and bought the threshold with my savings. I told everyone I was going to spend my retirement fishing, maybe write a book about my experiences. Only Agent Cross knew the truth. "I can't officially condone this," she said when I told her my plan, "but off the record, I understand. The connection is killing you slowly. At least this way it's on your terms. Will you look after Trevor?" "Of course, Tom. What you've done these past 3 years, helping the families, preventing more incidents, you've saved lives. I've postponed the inevitable. In 27 years, the ocean will need to feed again. And Trevor will prepare people like you did. Maybe by then we'll understand enough to find a different solution. Maybe." October 12th, 2024. Exactly 3 years since the Kodiak incident. I anchored the threshold at the exact coordinates where the Arctic Dream had sent its last Mayday. The water was calm, that unnatural stillness that marked the anomalies' presence. As the sun set, they began to surface, not physically, but visually, like projections in the water. Jimmy, Peter, Michael, David, Marcus, Billy, and all the others, but also hundreds more, thousands maybe, every soul the ocean had claimed over the millennia. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The invitation was clear. I sat on the deck of the threshold and opened my laptop, typing this final account. It's important that someone knows this wasn't desperation or madness. This is a choice, made with full understanding of the consequences. The ocean isn't evil, it's not good either. It simply is, a vast consciousness that exists outside our understanding of life and death. It takes, but it also gives. It transforms, but it also preserves. And sometimes, it needs intermediaries, beings that can exist between the human world and its alien consciousness. For 3 years, I've been that intermediary from the human side. Now, I'll be one from the ocean's side. I'll help the next cycle of chosen ones understand what's happening to them. I'll ease their transformation, make it less traumatic, And maybe, if I'm strong enough, I'll find a way to make the whole process more voluntary, less violent. Trevor is watching from shore with Agent Cross and a small team. He's ready to take over as the landside interpreter. He's young, strong, and has family ties that will keep him anchored to humanity longer than I managed. In 30 years, when the next full cycle comes, he'll be the one to prepare people, to explain what the ocean needs and why. I can feel them getting restless as midnight approaches. The barrier is thin tonight, thin enough for me to cross if I choose. And I do choose. Not because I'm compelled, not because I've gone insane, but because I understand now that this is what I was always meant to do. Every body I pulled from these waters, every family I couldn't give closure to, every nightmare about drowning, they were all preparing me for this moment. To whoever reads this, the ocean remembers everything. Every plastic bottle, every oil spill, every extinct species, but also every act of respect, every offering, every person who understood that we don't own the sea, we're just borrowing from it. The 17 men from 2021 aren't dead. They're part of that memory now, helping to maintain the balance between humanity's needs and the ocean's health. I'm about to join them. If you're a fisherman reading this, know that when your nets come up full, it might be because someone down there is guiding the fish to you. When you make it home through a storm, it might be because someone who knows those waters intimately is helping navigate. We're not gone. We're just fishing from the other side now. To the families of the 17, they're at peace. They miss you, but they're at peace. Every wave that touches the shore carries a little bit of their love for you. To Agent Cross, thank you for understanding. Keep the records. In 30 years, someone will need them. To Trevor, you're ready for this. Trust the connection, but don't let it consume you. Remember that your humanity is what makes you valuable as an interpreter. And when your time comes to choose based on what feels right, not what others expect. To my ex-wife Karen, if you ever read this, I finally found something that makes sense to me. I know you always said I loved the ocean more than anything else. You were right. It's 11:47 p.m. now. The water is glowing with that bioluminescent light that marks the anomaly. They're all here, waiting. Jimmy is smiling. He looks younger somehow, or maybe age just doesn't mean anything where he is. I'm leaving the laptop on the boat. The threshold will drift back to shore. I've made sure of that. This account will upload automatically to the secure server Agent Cross maintains. The water is warm despite the October air. That shouldn't be possible at this latitude. But possibility is a flexible concept here. I can feel myself beginning to dissolve. Not painfully, but like relaxing a muscle you didn't know was tense. My consciousness is expanding, touching every drop of water simultaneously. I understand now. We don't die. We just change states, like ice becoming water, becoming vapor, becoming rain. The cycle continues. My name was Tom Bradley. I was an Alaskan State Trooper for 18 years. I pulled 37 bodies from these waters over my career. Now I'm becoming the water itself, and I finally understand what I was pulling them from. Not death, but transformation. The families on shore will see the lights in the water tonight. They'll know another one has crossed over. Some will mourn, some will understand. Trevor will explain, as I explained, as someone will explain in 30 years. The ocean remembers everything, including this, including me, including you reading this. We're all part of the same cycle, the same vast consciousness that spans from the deepest trenches to the lightest rain. Most just don't realize it until they're ready to transform. I'm ready, the water is calling, and for the first time in 3 years, I'm not afraid to answer. Goodbye. This document was recovered from the fishing vessel Threshold. found drifting near Kodiak Harbor on October 13, 2024. Sergeant Tom Bradley is officially listed as missing, presumed drowned. However, multiple witnesses reported seeing lights in the water that night, forming patterns that resembled human figures. The Coast Guard has issued new navigation warnings for the coordinates mentioned in this document. Fishing vessels are advised to avoid the area during the month of October. Trevor Park has been hired as a consultant for the Coast Guard, specializing in anomalous maritime phenomena. The ocean remembers. Addendum, October 31, 2024. Commercial fishing vessel Endeavour reported contact with an unknown person in the water at the anomaly coordinates. The figure, described as translucent, like jellyfish but human-shaped, guided them away from a sudden storm system that appeared on no weather radar. The figure identified itself as Tom, before disappearing beneath the waves. The 18 fishermen aboard the Endeavour returned safely to port. The ocean provides.